Hi, welcome to Portage County Matters. I'm Patty Dreier, Portage County Executive. Great to have you with us today. We've got a really important topic that we're going to talk about today with two people who are far greater experts in this subject matter than I'll ever be. And that's John Eron, who is from Eron Agronomics, who's a crop farmer and custom harvester right here in Portage County, and also Ken Schroeder, our ag agent with UW Extension here in Portage County. We're going to talk about a noxious weed called wild parsnip that is taking control of some of our roadsides, and we're going to do something about it here in Portage County with a new ordinance that was passed recently by the Portage County Board of Supervisors, and then I signed off on it, that declares that the wild parsnip is a noxious weed as a terrestrial invasive species. And what we want to do then is eradicate it and make sure that we're then preserving our natural environments along those roadsides and keeping people safe. We're going to learn more about what the health threats are of this particular plant, not just its natural ecosystem kind of threats. So I want to say welcome, John, and welcome, Ken. I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Good morning, Patty. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to start, John, tell us a little bit about yourself. John Eron, as a local farmer that is one of the most active citizens that I know in our whole community, and I just really respect you a lot and appreciate what you've done. But I think your story is a really cool one, and folks would love to hear more about what brings us here today from your standpoint.
Yeah, well, with the wild parsnip, it all kind of dates back, it was about 2 years ago. A local environmentalist, so to speak, a friend of mine, Ann Graham, had come to me and said, John, you know, we need a little help. We've got a few plants that are growing in the roadside ditches that are very problematic. So at first I kind of blew her off. I'm like, seriously, Ann, is this really a problem? You know, I'm kind of busy planting now. And then, you know, she came back and, you know, a couple weeks later and called me up. She says, hey, I'd really like to take you out and show you some of these spots that are of concern. So I made a little time. We you know, brought the wife and my son Jack along, and went out and we looked at some of these areas, and she really explained what was going on, why it was a problem. And I told her, I said, well, I'll start talking to folks I know, and we'll see if we can make something happen. So from there was probably maybe a 6-month gap or so, and then we started talking about some tours for the Friends of Mill Creek watershed. So
and
really,
you're also involved with that, and I didn't even say that
I'm
in the
the
intro.
resources and education coordinator for Friends of Mill Creek. So we decided to put together a tour, and we call it a conservation tour. So we look at local farmers that are doing conservation practices, and we also try to mix it in with somebody who's non-farming but is doing some type of really neat conservation-minded practice on their property. So at the time that year, we went out and toured a local farmer and also you know, local environmentalist, so to speak. And going down the side road, we had, you know, I was pulling a wagon, had my tractor, a nice little covered wagon. We had, Ken was along, we had people from Land and Water Conservation from both Portage County and Wood County. And then, you know, a few DNR personnel and whatnot. So yeah, we're driving down the road, and just in between sites, and I believe it was Lisa Kardash from the DNR kind of mentioned, like, hey, we should take a look. There's that wild parsnip here. There's quite a big patch in the ditch. So we stopped to take a look at it.
Interesting.
And, you know, with everybody there, they kind of said, you know, we really need to try doing something with this. So we started working on it, and we started contacting other organizations. And I know even through Farm Bureau, I'm the County Farm Bureau president.
And I didn't even say that in your intro.
Yep.
You must have about 7 titles.
Well,
I only gave
this
about
is about
3.
about you and wild parsnip, so I'm trying to keep it short. So yeah, we brought it through Farm Bureau and said, hey, we'd like to look at this as bringing it on one of our policies, that we'd like to see this as a state noxious weed, to hopefully try eradicating this thing, or at least try to hold it in control. So it's really been a grassroots program the whole way through with local citizens.
No pun intended on that one, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ken's over here like nodding his head. Yeah,
Yeah,
grassroots.
and then I believe it was just this last January that I'd called a meeting with you, with a bunch of other organizations. We got together, both Portage and Wood County, and we met right here at the Annex building and talked about what we could do collaboratively to get this up and going. And I know a few gentlemen, some of the supervisors said, we'd really love to see this brought through kind of a soft start, so to speak, you know.
So speaking of soft start, thank you, hold the story. Now I want to go over here to Ken. Ken Schroeder, egg agent. Let's talk about what this plant is before we dig down deeper, because and no pun intended on that one either, because this is a plant that people need to learn to identify. And I know that we're taping a radio show at the same time as a YouTube television show. But the bottom line is these images are available on the visual form, and they can also go to the county's website, and we'll have a link on the wild parsnip so folks can pull it up there, or you could do a Google search, and you'll come up with some images. But Ken, let's talk about a little bit more of the botanical side of things, what this plant is all about, how to recognize it, where it grows, what it kind of its habits are, so that people can begin to get themselves familiar. Then we're going to come back to the whole noxious idea, and what are we going to do about this obnoxious plant that's misplacing itself here from its European roots.
Okay, you're right. So the wild parsnip is a relative of the carrot, and let's just show the whole picture of it. And so here it is with the flowering stalk and all. So let's basically back up and say, okay, so it is a member of the carrot family, a similar flower to the carrot family, but it starts out, it has two growth stages. Starts out as a basal rosette. If you're familiar with burdock, you probably have recognized where the first year it grows a cluster of leaves. And this is basically the leaf clusters that we have here. And then the leaflets on there, which is also good ID features, it has multiple pairs, up to 5 to 15 pairs of leaflets on these leaf stalks, and the fact that they're serrated or jagged around the edges. These are all ID features that help when it's young in that first year of growth.
So compound leaves is what we're looking for
Compound
those of
leaves,
you that
correct.
Understand what compound leaves are versus simple leaves on plants.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, so that's the first year. And then the second to third year, depending on how good it's growing, we get this flowering stalk that's put up. And the ID features on that are the fact that the stem is hollow and it's grooved and can grow about 4 to 5 feet tall to the top. Then the flower itself, as you can see, is yellow in color, and it's this flat-topped cluster of yellow flowers. So
sort of like a yellow Queen Anne's lace to some people who know what Queen Anne's lace looks like.
Correct. Very similar. It's a relative of that. And so those are the features that you're going to be looking for, and I guess in its second to third year, that's probably when it's most identifiable as far as driving by. But if you're familiar with the plant and know that it's there, then you can go back in the spring and ID it as well as the young growth develops. So the plant itself likes to grow. We're going to see it showing up mostly on roadsides, in the ditches, along railroad tracks. It likes kind of grassy areas where it's going to pop up and do well. We'll see it on the borders of fields and so forth also. So it's pretty aggressive type of plant.
One of the things, Ken, and then I do want you to talk about the seeding of it in a second here, and its deep taproot, but it talks about similar species on this other brochure that you had given me, and we had talked about this with you, John, and Ken at the Towns Association. It was last time, 2 months ago it was. And it talks about the wild parsnip is distinguished from other species in the parsley family, same as carrot family, by its yellow flowers and pinnately compound leaves, which are divided once into more than 5 leaflets. Golden Alexander, and I do have some Golden Alexander in one of my gardens, which is a very fine plant, and it's a native plant, but Golden Alexander can be distinguished from the parsnip by its earlier flowering time, shorter stature, less open appearance, and 2 to 3 pairs of leaflets. So for anybody that is into gardening and growing and understanding herbaceous plants, those are a couple of key indicators for you right there. So let's go on to the characteristics of the plant and why it causes us some trouble.
Okay, so the plant itself, and the reason we're so concerned about it is that if you get that sap on your skin, you can develop a rash, and it's the process of you get the sap on the skin and then you're exposed to sunlight. In the absence of that sunlight exposure, you won't have that rash develop. But what it does, it can be anywhere from reddish spots to some pretty nasty blisters that will develop.
And we're going to be putting some pictures, we hope, with the help of the folks here in the studio on the screen. These blister-related photos, John, that you were sharing at Towns Association. I'm telling you, if you know what poison ivy looks like, I would say multiply it times how many times for a negative effect of what this can cause to our human body. So, so if children get into it, if people working on roadsides, people trying to take care of other, weeds in their roads or mowing operations or so on, we can get ourselves into some trouble if that sap gets on our skin and then it's exposed to sunlight. And this is a lasting thing. This isn't something that goes away quickly. It can, by your diagrams, John, that it can even look a lot worse over the next few days rather than starting to get better.
Right, and that's important because it may not show up right away. It can show up 24 to 48 hours later when you start to see it. So at the point of exposure, you won't know it. You won't know that it happened, but then later on it's going to start to develop. Important thing too, you talked about poison ivy, is to know that these blisters, if they start leaking and so on, and you get them somewhere else on your body, it's not going to spread from that weeping. It does not spread on the body.
The wild parsnip sap doesn't, the same as poison ivy.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
Now, okay, so John, farmer, and then the mowing aspect along the fence lines and so on. Talk about why does this matter to you? Now, I know that you had other people talk with you, and I know that some people from Europe brought this plant because this is the same species, right, that we grow in gardens by people who understand the plant. To grow the wild parsnip that we can buy in the grocery store, which tastes wonderful in stews, for example. But it's gotten away from us because it's not native here. And then for those that don't understand the plant, and then they get these negative effects, and it starts to take over where native habitats are, that's what's really causing the trouble. But what about from the growing standpoint, from your farming standpoint?
Yeah, well, our big concern with it, it's something that we can easily kill with tillage or any type of herbicide. So that's important from an agricultural aspect to know that this is something easily controlled within the field. Our concern is when it's on edge of field and it keeps moving. Even your dog gets into this stuff. They start chewing on it or something, like animals like to chew on grass and stuff. They can have some real issues.
I never thought about that. You're right.
It's not something you really want getting mixed in with your cattle feed if it does get away in the field. But we look at it more just from the environmental aspect and from the human health aspect. Especially like at the Towns Association meetings that I've been to, showing these people, like the people that are most susceptible are young children and elderly. They're the ones that usually end up with the really bad rashes. So we look at it like, if you can imagine your son or grandson or granddaughter or grandson, having this terrible rash on them. It's one thing during the summertime, as terrible as that would be, but can you imagine going back to school and having trouble writing or something like that, or just
because it's really swollen. My goodness, that's
they
just
can really
terrible.
Some people can really swell up bad for it, and they can last for quite some time on certain folks.
Okay, so Ken, I know that you brought along pictures that also talk about its seed stages, and we can talk a little bit about when it flowers and seeds, and how we can kind of intercept that process. Then we'll go back and talk about the town government aspect and the landowner perspective, and some organic ways to deal with this plant in addition to some chemical applications. So it depends on what people's preferences are in their own lives as to how they want to help us deal with this noxious weed.
Right. So it'll start out in spring again, coming from that basal rosette, or the cluster. Looks a lot like celery leaves actually, and it's going to put up this flowering stalk, and it's going to flower midsummer basically to mid to late summer, that window where it's going to be flowering. And so we can expect around here anywhere from about mid-June, unless we have early. I mean, it varies, as you all know. Plants every year are a little bit different, but really you need to start watching for it about mid-June.
Which is why we're filming the show now purposefully, to be able to get out there and have folks be recognizing this in the right time of year
June
to do
is
something
invasive
about it.
plant
And
month.
thanks to you, John, for helping us do that.
Right, and then it's going to start producing seed probably around mid-August. And at that point, when it starts producing seed, we don't want to be mowing that plant. I mean, mowing is one option to help control it, but when it starts to set seed, we need to stop, because that's the primary way that it spreads. It doesn't spread by underground roots, rhizomes, and pushing up plants elsewhere. It's all about the seed, so we need to prevent the seed from spreading.
Now, you brought along a picture,
Yeah.
and I think that was a really valuable view that we could show here.
Okay, so here's the seed cluster as it has fully seeded out, and they've got these seeds that are about 1/4 inch in diameter. They're fairly flat, and you just see them how they've developed on that
In their umbels,
originally
yep.
that flat top flower cluster, technically called an umbel. And so that's what you need to look for as those flowers turn from being yellow to start turning to brown, and you see the seeds develop. Then it's time to change our management practices at that point.
So could a person go collect the seeds and then destroy the seeds? Ken, I know you're laughing. I'm just asking.
Right. I don't. If it's gone to seed, it probably is good to kind of cut the tops, put them
yeah.
in bags.
If you were protecting yourself when you did it.
And destroy them. Exactly right. And in the smaller scale situations, that is an option, because if you're going to take the plant out and it's gone to seed, you have to be careful that you don't spill the seeds all over. So putting
Right,
them in a bag
exactly.
and then destroying them, that is a good point.
Yeah.
But
If
we
you just
don't
have a few species on your land, that might be a more safe way, I guess, to take care of it than to worry about if you wanted to grab a herbicide and give it a zap.
Correct. And it is on the invasive species list, on the DNR's list, so you can't be giving these seeds to your neighbor. That's the whole point about it. We don't want to
Bad
spread
idea,
it,
people.
voluntarily. Inadvertently is how it
Yes.
does get spread, and that's what we need to focus on as far as getting it under control again.
Thank you. All right.
You're
So
welcome.
let's go back to what makes a noxious weed and how we're going to deal with this here. So John, it's your turn on this one. I think that you would be
As far as the
great guy to
noxious
talk
weed,
about it.
So what we've done in the state of Wisconsin, towns, municipalities, DNR, and the state, they all have the authority to declare a weed a noxious weed. It's really an open-ended law. You can, at any point in time at a county board meeting, whatnot, you can declare a weed noxious. If in the hopes of this, if we eradicate it within a reasonable amount of time,
We could take
you
it off the
You can
list,
pull it
couldn't we?
off the list. Yep. I wish it would be that simple, but I got a feeling this one's going to take a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, it gives it gives everybody the authority to go after it more, so to speak. So like with landowners, some of the questions we get is, we run into problems. It's not only in the roadside ditches. This stuff is now spread beyond the right of way. So what we've been doing is working on getting permission slips out there from township levels to. We need to figure out where the stuff is all at first. And
Yep.
then we'll contact the landowners and give them, get slips to them, or if not, hopefully personally talk to them if there's a bigger patch. But actually, get their permission first so they understand, the roadside right-of-way, township or county has full legal authority to do what needs to be done in there to eradicate that plant. But if it goes on a private property, it really comes up to the private citizen to do the eradication. Right now, we're working on ways with trying to get some grant money and stuff and try to help that landowner take care of this problem, so it's not a financial burden for them.
So that's a good it's a good interruption for a moment here, I think, on the fact that we've got a relatively new noxious weed in our county. And I guess we didn't talk about that yet before we come back to the citizen movement that's going to help us map where these plants are located. That's going to be something I'm going to call out for our community to get involved with. And if people are interested in getting on our invasive species team, if you would, to get us out there, identify which roadsides this plant is located, and then help us send that data in. We'll get it on our mapping programs in the planning and zoning department, and then send those maps back out to the municipalities, to our highway department, and to others such as you, Ken, or John, to be able to help us then work with folks to do something about it. So let's talk about how new it is, and
Right.
what you're
So
discovering.
again, I think we mentioned earlier that it's been around in the U.S. since the 1900s, and it's gradually been spreading and working its way out. It's relatively speaking, relatively new to Portage County. It's been around for a number of years if you start looking at the populations that have developed, but it's still something that we need to jump on with both feet and help to reduce the populations.
So we're talking with John Eron and Ken Schroeder, and we're talking about the noxious weed, wild parsnip. And so, John, will you talk about, okay, these next steps now, and what do we do? How will we work? Why are we working with Wood County? How will people who have an interest in maintaining their organic status deal with this? Because there are some choices. It isn't all about chemicals, but chemicals is a tool. Chemicals are tools for situations where it's so widespread that's just not going to work any other way to get us back to some more natural balance.
Absolutely.
I know
So
you're the expert here.
Wood County, we work real closely with Shane Wickerfenning. He's a land and water conservationist for Wood County. He's been helping us out. We've got a program that we've been using that the state has. It's called EDDS Maps. That's what we've been logging everything into. It's a statewide database. So obviously with Portage and Wood County being adjoined, it all kind of started with our watershed, because our watershed, the Mill Creek watershed, is half in Wood County, half in Portage. So being we already had this close relationship working together, and we found a lot of the stuff, obviously, over into the Wood County side. They said, you know, we need to go after this jointly together. We'd like to see other counties shortly start kind of joining the efforts. But yeah, with getting back to on the landowner end of it, so some landowners have organic crops, and they obviously would not like the county spraying,
Right, of course.
any type of herbicides that would kill this. So the options that those landowners have, obviously, it kind of comes more into their aspect that what they need to do. There's pulling. I'm sure Ken will probably explain a little bit of that in a few minutes. Ways that you can manually eradicate this plant by pulling it.
Dig out the taproot?
Right. There's a certain amount of mowing. Mowing is effective to a certain point. It holds it back from going to seed, but you still run into the problem. It doesn't kill it. It's classified as a monocarpic perennial, which as a farmer, I'm used to annuals and perennials. I hear this one coming through, and I'm like, well, that sounds exciting.
Basically, that just means that it won't necessarily, we talk about biennials where they grow this rosette, they grow the flowering stalk the second year,
Like mullein.
and then they die.
Yes.
Correct. But in this case, it may take 2 years before it grows that flower stalk. Once the flower stalk has set seed, then it does die, but that's where we get into that little different technical description of it. But basically what it means is it's a two-stage growth pattern, and it may be over a 2 years to 3 year time period before the plant itself dies.
Yep. So what we're doing, like I said, we're really doing this grassroots movement with this. I've been contacting a lot of the townships, getting those guys all ready to go. Town of Carson's actually kind of been our pilot program.
Where you live, which is a terrific way to do it, John.
We have a great town board there, and the town chairman, Wally Zawicki, he's been very open as far as these ideas. So many times I've brought in stuff to him, says, hey, Wally, this is what we're looking at doing. And he's like, okay, these are going to be some issues as far as public kickback, backlash from trying to do something like this.
Or the need for public ed, right?
Yep. So they've really been helpful. I know I've gone to the town of Old Plain too, worked with them, and just got some really good feedback. So we knew how to, we spent 2 years working on this, really getting, figured out how to do this best to bring it to the public. So it's not from a top-down approach that people all of a sudden read about it in the paper, or they hear about it first on this and they're upset that, okay, now we got this weed we have to deal with that we're forced to deal with or something like that. And they just get upset instead of, the ambition that we need to actually go forth and try to eradicate this thing.
So what are some of the actions that have already been taken? I know we have taken some, and that's a beautiful thing.
So a few things we've done. I know plenty of volunteers from some of our groups, so we've already taken a few volunteer groups out and gone and pulled some of these things. At the same time, we've done a few sprayings and odds and ends for purple loosestrife and things like that are also out there. But yeah, it's, if there's small pockets, we've gone out, usually in a pickup truck or something, get out there, I give everybody a bunch of gloves and whatnot, and we go and pull this stuff, bag it. A lot of times we hit it early enough that we can simply take a shovel, dig in the ground 2 to 3 inches below the surface to kind of hit the taproot. You could tip it right over and it'll die right there in the ditch. It's not an issue from that point.
Interesting.
Yep, and that's ideal. So beyond that, we've done a few sprayings. I know I've done a few on my own, just where we found some stuff on some rented property. So went and talked to the landowner, contacted the township. He says, yep, no problem, let's just make sure we map it. And that's where we're really going in the future, with having citizens help us find this stuff, help us track at what stage in its growth pattern it's in.
Yes.
We can be a lot more effective as far as controlling this thing.
Ken, what else would you like to say about the plant or the practices that we're going through?
Right, so again, was mentioned, one control, if it's just a few plants, the best option is to cut it below the ground a couple inches, snap the taproot before it's seeded and just let it die. Or you can pull it, or if you have the rosettes, the same thing, you can just pull it and that's good. So again, we can focus on that. That's also very helpful from an organic standpoint. If you don't want to be applying chemicals, there are options out there. You need to know that. And there are some information on managing the wild parsnip, which we will have posted to the county website as well. Some good tips on doing that. So I guess that's important to keep in mind.
Would you say, Ken, that if a person has a question after listening to the show, or they want to really become a mini expert in the wild parsnip, that they could give your office a call? Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely. They can call the extension office. I can give you the phone number.
That'd be great.
715-346-1316. That's our extension office, and we've got readily available ID information and handouts and stuff like that. We can talk you through the process, and then again, if they see a patch on the roadside and want to report that, I mean, they can call me, or better yet, they can call the Planning and Zoning Office, talk to Land Conservation, and they will actually physically put that site on the map. So if you're out there and spot it, and you got your cell phone handy, give Planning and Zoning a call and say, hey, we've got wild parsnip out here. I'm on the corner of such and such a road, or and that will be helpful too. Then the counties, we can address that at the county and township level.
So we're developing these maps, and we'll continue to share that information with everybody. We'll be using those maps in our highway department to keep our highway staff and we'll share it with municipalities to keep all the roadside staff as safe as we can, and then get it back into educating more and more people about the fact that they have opportunities to help us deal with this terrestrial invasive plant that will allow us then to get back to more native species in our area and keep people from getting into some situation where they have some health effects that are so negative from the sap of this wild parsnip plant. We have about 30 seconds yet, and I just wonder, John, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to invite people to think about?
Well, the big thing is just I'd like to thank you, Patty, as our county executive, for really taking a stance, helping us out with this. We've got a lot of support from obviously Ken Schroeder, local planning and zoning, with Dan O'Connell, with Steve Bradley. They've been a great part, and especially our collaborators from Wood County side with Shane Wookerfinning and everybody else. It's really a collective community effort.
Fabulous. Well, thank you both. And without you, we wouldn't be where we are in dealing with this issue. All right. See you next time on Portage County Matters, everybody.